I don't know of another county that has the same breadth of language. I don't know of another county that has the same type of humour. I don't know if there's another county that are as good as of taking the mick out of themselves as we are. I don't know of another county where the north-south divide in the main city is huge, but it's huge in such a fun way. Do you know what I mean? So, I mean, yeah, you could replicate it for other places, but there's something about the way Cork people go at it that is completely unique. Like, that's for me is the trick. You have to make people think differently. Like, I taught the Life Centre for a number of years, and that's the battle. The battle is make them think differently, and it's predominantly make them think differently about themselves. You know, I was that kid who at 16, 17 was completely lost because, you know, there was people who believed me, but I couldn't hear it. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
Yeah. So, I mean, all that feeds into what I do as well. All that passion and anger and frustration and belief. Poetry, they'd be saying. I bet you're good looking by if I had 3 weeks to spare.
It's not good for me, Stan. Oh, I have to go back to work after this.
Laughter's always good for you, Geraldine.
Kenny, yeah. So today I chat to creative director Stanley Notte. Stan, you're very welcome to the Cork Creative Podcast.
Thank you very much indeed. Delighted to be here.
So you grew up in London before returning to Cork in the 70s. How did that early transition shape your deep, enduring connection to the city?
What a really interesting question. So we used to come on, so I lived in London from the age of 4 to 12, and we used to come home here every year for the 6 weeks of the summer holidays. The schools only closed for 6 weeks in England. And we obviously loved the freedom. I mean, the difference between here and London was unbelievable. So we had a connection at that stage already. The move back was traumatic in ways, and I'll explain that in a second. But I think, I've never thought about this actually, but I think the first connection for me was with language. I was always fascinated with language, always. I have a very, very clear memory of being a very young child, like 6 or 7, in my aunt's house, and she had 2 signs on the kitchen wall, and one of them is that classic prayer, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, etc. And the other one was, I ask the simple questions, the truth I only wish, are all the fishermen liars, or do all the liars fish? And I was fascinated, absolutely fascinated. And coming back to live here gave you, I suppose, maybe a slightly different opportunity to come for 6 weeks and hearing different people speaking, and you know, the lingo and the slang always interests me. I remember the first time somebody called me a dirty little kaffir, and I was maybe 8, and I'm thinking, what does that mean? Do you know what I mean? So that would be the first thing. And look, the friendships in Cork are amazing. So, and I'm still friends. I played football with Everton from the age of 12, maybe 13, and I still have loads of friends from that. And we were very fortunate with the people that we were hanging around with in town at that time. I still have friends from that, people that I still see regularly. Kieran Birmingham, who's an actor and has appeared in, among other things, The Young Offenders is the first one. Yeah, so I mean, I think maybe at that age, it's a good age in some ways to come back and get immersed in a new culture, you know, and the freedom. I mean, I can't describe to you the difference between the freedom in Cork and the lack of freedom in London. We had like a 500-metre radius around the house that we were allowed to explore in London, and anything beyond that, and it was panic stations. We'd come home here, get out of bed at 9 o'clock in the morning, go out the door, and nobody cared where you were. Go back at 10 o'clock at night, or before that, only if you were hungry. And like slogging apples and going collecting blackberries and chopping trees. There's things you just never ever had, and I don't even think it was on the radar in London. Do you know what I mean? It's just a completely different way of life. I mean, look, I've a brother and a sister who went back to London fairly quickly after they left school. My younger brother and sister, and they've made their lives there. I had children very young. I was 20 when we had our first girl, Eileen and I. And I always knew I wasn't going to bring children up in London. I always knew, just from my own experience of the two, you know.
Okay.
So yeah, I suppose the connections. It's such an interesting question because I've never really thought about that. Certainly, friendship was one. Language is definitely another, and freedom would be the other one. Yeah.
So talking about the creating, like from writing fiction and performing slam poetry to creating visual art, you're incredibly multi-talented. What first sparked your passion for such diverse creative outlets?
It's been an interesting journey. So I have a brother who is, and I'm not exaggerating, a world famous artist within a certain, he's a street artist. I don't know if you remember the Asian girl that was on the Kino a few years ago, big long mural. He did that. I curated, but he did it. He's incredibly talented. He could draw recognizable portraits when he was 10. I was the logical one. I was good at maths and problem solving. And, for a very, very long time, I didn't believe I was creative. But then so there was something that happened I started writing when I was around 40, about 2 years before I was diagnosed with depression. And I know
Mhm.
now that was, it was part of that was the a need to express what was going on with me that was causing the depression. But also it was a kind of suppressed creativity coming to life. My mother has said, well, she didn't say it to me after she passed. Somebody said to me that my mum was I'd often said to her that I drew a lot in my teenage years. I've no recollection of that. I do remember doing lots of jigsaw puzzles, and I do remember building a castle out of cardboard when we were in the place called Day Street in London. But the only reason I remember that is that I left it out and it got saturated, and I remember looking out the window at it being literally collapsing before my eyes. So I think it was more of a suppressed, because Finbar was so talented. I think we kind of thought there's no point. And then I started writing, and then so I know because this is it's not that it's a tough one. I just get a bit emotional when I think about it.
Mm.
My life changed. I don't know the date, but I was up and down to Dublin with the Defence Force. I was involved with the Defence Force Association. And I was leaving the office one day at about 2:45 to get the 3 o'clock train down as in the old days when the next one wasn't until 5:30.
Mhm.
And somebody said, I was hoping to have a word with you. And I know 999 times out of 1,000, I'd have said, no, I need to get the train. But for whatever on this side, I said, okay. And I was in the train station at 3:25 with 2 hours to kill. And I'd been going up and down to Dublin for 3 years at that stage. And I noticed an Eason's in the train station for the first time ever. And I went in and I had a ramble around. I'm a big reader, big book lover. And I bought a book on the title. It's called The Sound of Paper, written by an American girl called Julia Cameron. And I read the bulk of it on the way home, or a good chunk of it, and I finished it by the following Monday, and my life had changed with that one
Gosh.
book. It's a book about, so it's a kind of a tangent of her foundational work, which is called The Artist Way, which is a book about getting in touch with or reconnecting with your artist, your creative self, and how you could, and tasks and things to do with that. It's a 12-week course. And I bought the book and I did the course on my own, and it just had a huge impact on me.
Gosh.
And then when I finished the book, I left the Navy not long after, and I spent 9 months writing a novel, which never went anywhere in the end, mainly because of my lack of belief. And then was starting to struggle with the creative stuff again, and I went back to do The Artist Way again, and I was struggling to do it again. And I came into the kitchen one day, and I said to my wife, she talks at the back of this book about what she calls Artist Way clusters, which is people working as groups. Right now I feel that would be good for me because I'm really struggling to do it on my own. And my wife left the house, went into Bandon Road, and there was a flyer on the wall for an Artist Way. You couldn't make it up. You could not
Yeah.
make it up. So I went and did that with Kirsten Walsh. She's still a friend of mine, and it was amazing. And as it turns out, she was teaching people how to draw from a book called Drawing from the Right Side of the Brain. And I went and did that with her, and within 6 weeks was drawing.
Gosh.
Yeah, nuts. Yeah. And then they just all feed in together eventually, the writing, my love of music. I started writing poems using song titles, and then because I am such a music fan, I spent years looking at record sleeves, and I'm not looking at them, I mean gazing at them. And then I started developing art for the poems, and when I look back and they were crap, but I did an exhibition with them because I thought they were so amazing. And then eventually it just turned into all sorts of things, and then all those things you've done as a younger person come out of you. So I now design record sleeves for pieces of poems that I do. Um, and a friend of mine said to me one time, because you're starting something new, I said, I'm not sure about this. And he said to me, listen, he said, what you're doing is incredible. He said, and what I think is that all those years of buying and studying and immersing yourself in the music and the art and the fashion that's been your college. And it just, I mean, I don't want to, it is easy for me, right? It's not easy to
Mhm.
create the stuff because it takes time and effort. But the ideas side of it is easy for me, and doing it is easy for me because it's like diving into the deep end of your favourite
Yeah.
thing. Do you know what I mean?
And I suppose you just opened that door and you just walked through
Yeah,
it, and it just
yeah,
all it was like it all revealed itself to you as
exactly.
such.
And the Cork
Okay.
stuff has been exactly the same. I mean, I started doing
Mhm.
this for fun. I used to get T-shirts printed for myself with one word on them. So I remember getting a T-shirt printed with defenestration on it just for the sake of it. And then I started doing Cork stuff just because I love the language, just because I
Yeah.
love the language. And then people saying, so I had one at one stage with a this red T-shirt, and it just had "How Can I Exist" on it. And I remember going into
Yeah.
open mics and people going, "Is that a reference to the Frank and Walters?" And I'm going, "Yeah." And so people get it, you know what I mean? And then
Mm.
people started saying, "Oh, I'd love one of them, or you should be selling them." And over quite a period of time, I realised that they were right. They were absolutely right. You put a T-shirt like this in front of people with notions on it, or "I will, yeah," and they're just wow. I love it. Where did you get the idea? Where did you get the idea of taking a Cork phrase and sticking it on a T-shirt? I can't believe nobody else ever thought of it. I literally
It's
can't
such a
believe.
simple thing, like, isn't it?
Yeah,
But it makes like if you're a Cork person, you're seeing, you're like,
yeah,
brilliant,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah,
simple ideas are often the
yeah.
best.
And then I suppose the thing with my brain and the way I work is I always think big. Now that can be a drawback, and for many years it was, because I get an idea and then I'm immediately imagining I'm on the Graham Norton show, or the Late Late Show, or whatever. And I realised when I was doing The Artist's Way, that's a huge barrier because you're jumping too far ahead,
Mm.
and you're not giving it time to progress. And for somebody like me with a traumatic background and a lack of self-esteem, it becomes a huge barrier. But the magic with the Cork thing is I've done a lot of therapy and I'm in a really good place around myself. And then I can see just endless opportunities. And then I can also find, and again, it's one of my gifts, I can find ways to create things that are funny and quirky. And that was a drawback for a while because I thought, oh, it's only a niche market. But actually, when you sit down and think about it, it's not a niche market. It is Cork. And you can say that's niche, but there's Cork people all over the world. And there's millions of them. Do you know what I mean? And I think one of the amazing things about Cork is, like, this thing is you could replicate this for every county in the country. I've no doubt about that. But I don't know of another county that has the same breadth of language. I don't know of another county that has the same type of humour. I don't know if there's another county that are as good as of taking the mick out of themselves as we are. I don't know of another county where the north-south divide in the main city is huge, but it's huge in such a fun way. Do you know what I
Mm.
mean? So, I mean, yeah, you could replicate it for other places, but there's something about the way Cork people go at it that is completely unique. Um, and I've been very fortunate that I'm able to put that in play on things in ways that people get. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
And you touched there about on your mental health, like you're a prominent advocate for mental health awareness, and that thread runs through a lot of your poetry and your speaking work. How did you first decide to make that part of your creative identity? And was it ever a difficult choice?
It wasn't a choice at all.
Just part of.
It was part of getting well. So I
Mm.
have a series of books here that I did a couple of years ago. There's 6 short stories in the books. 5 of them are as bleak as anything you will ever read, and they were all written when I was writing first, prior to my diagnosis. I had no idea, and I would have put a lot of money on the fact that they were not autobiographical when I wrote them. And then when I went back and looked at them a few years later, they're not completely autobiographical, but the themes and the darkness and the fear is completely autobiographical. And I
Mm.
believe that if it was decided, it was decided by something inside me that I can't do this anymore. I need to get this out into the world. So it was never a decision for me. And then when I was diagnosed with depression, turns out I'm a freak of nature because I just told everybody. I I didn't actually understand that most people don't do that. You know,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah. I suppose a lot of people find it difficult. They would prefer almost to let's just avoid
one
the
hundred
elephant
percent.
in the room, you know. But it's quite a nice feeling then for someone to actually engage with someone like,
Yeah, 100%. And I'm not being critical of other people. I just don't
yeah,
understand that because that's not how I work.
it's just your
It's
way.
just my way, and I suppose in lots of ways I just don't have that fear of things that other people have. Do you know what I mean? And it's a blessing and it's a gift. And my mum had this gift where people would stop on the street, complete strangers, and tell her all their problems, and we'd be with her. I'm like, what's going on here? Like, so I don't know. Somehow that and interestingly, my dad is completely different, completely closed in that area. But that's just the way I've always been, as far as I can remember. Like,
And has your mental health journey impacted your art? And how does your kind of creativity help you navigate those challenges? Is it just that it makes you just not give a crap, like, or?
well, it's helped me to consolidate that position. I can tell you, there was always a part of me that just didn't give a crap. The creativity helped me get well. That's the first thing. That was the huge outlet. Writing those stories, writing the poems, and there was a huge amount of themes about mental health, and that all helped me. And even it was helping me before I even knew it. That's an incredible gift to be given, because I'm not 100% well. I'm not sure if anybody who has a mental health issue like I do is ever 100% well, but I'm very, very well now in comparison to what I used to be. And what it also did was allowed me to start expressing myself even more accurately, if you want. And then people say you find your tribe and you find your family. You just find all these other creative people. And it was amazing for me to be in rooms with people where me saying, oh, I think I might put some music to that poem. And they go, oh, that's a great idea. Whereas, in school, and I played an awful lot of football and I loved the football game. But there's not many people in that environment that are saying, oh, I'm writing songs, or maybe no, it's different.
Mhm.
So, and that's another thing Cork is incredible for. There are so many creative people who are, you know, so open to working with other creative people and so willing to give you a leg up or say to you, well, why don't you do this? Or I'll give you a hand with this. Or, so I mean, the only reason I recorded music with my poetry was because I met a guy called Malcolm Uckhart from The Lost Gecko. And the first night he played with me, I'd asked him, then he did an improv thing with it. And that very first night he said to me, you should do more of that. Really? And then within a month he said, you should be recording that stuff in the studio. And we went down and recorded in the studio, and then we started doing gigs together, and he just started bringing other people with him. Before I knew it, I was working with The Lost Gecko, which is a 3-piece band. But that's what Cork people do. I've worked with Eileen Healy, who's an incredible musician. I've worked with Megan Ali Maguire. I have an album coming out shortly, and there's a track with each of them on it. I've worked with them. I can't think what they call themselves as a band. There's a group of musicians down in Clonakilty. They're incredible, and I've worked with them. They've improv behind me. Like, it's almost like they'd be queuing up to work with you. You know what I mean? It's just and it's the same the other way around for me. If I'm at something and there's other poets there, it's just. And I'm sure that's replicated in other places, but it's incredibly strong in Cork. It's incredibly strong.
Okay. And transitioning from your career in the Naval Service to the unpredictable world of art and business must have been daunting. What was the biggest hurdle you faced during that shift?
The biggest hurdle was going from having a regular income to not having a regular income. I mean, look, I have a small pension from the Defence Forces, which is a help. It makes it a little bit easier to do the kind of things I did. I'm not sure I would be doing what I did if I had to go and, actually really earn a living if I get a full-time job. But the shift from a regular income to a lack of a regular income was challenging. And, and obviously we've had the artist payment scheme, and it's going to be reinvigorated, and the feedback from that has been incredible about the stability it's given artists, and the fact that they're creating more because they're not worried about paying the rent. I mean, I have absolutely massive admiration for anybody who commits to a career in the arts full time with no backup whatsoever, because it must feel like a yawning chasm underneath you the whole time. Do you know what I mean? And yet they do. Yeah. And yet, thousands of people in Ireland do it. And, one of my bugbearers about Ireland is that, we love our artists. We particularly love them when they've been successful, because we're not particularly fond of giving them money on the way up or support on the way up. That would be a bugbear of mine. It's a particular bugbear now, because we've come out of the pandemic, and everybody knows that in the pandemic people appreciate artists more than they ever did. Our lives would have been much, much poorer without it, and yet we're still in a place where, most poets do most of their readings for free. But for me, all I can do, and I keep saying this, all I can do is keep doing what I do, do it to the best of my ability, enjoy it, and, believe that it'll work, and it will work. I know that it will work. But it's a hugely challenging world we live in at the same time, And I'm so glad that I did the artist way, and I'm so glad I've done years and years of therapy, because I can maintain a positive attitude most of the time throughout this. I mean, turn on the news right now and, yeah, man, it's, the world is,
Yeah.
it's a very, very, I mean, I haven't put this on a T-shirt yet, Geraldine, but I'm going to put it on a T-shirt, right? Jim Morrison was right. People are strange.
That is so true.
So true. So true.
And speaking about your everyday products, like with the featuring the phrases like "I will," yeah, and what you're wearing now, notions. How do you decide which sayings capture the right energy to immortalize?
Well, I think initially that it was, there's a number of them are just classics. I will, you're some Langer, chalk it down. They're just classics. I actually didn't do notions for a long time, but somebody else reminded me that you need to do it. So I kind of go my gut on it, but then I'm always open to suggestions. And then a little bit like creating anything, the final call has to be yours. Somebody would say to you, "You've written a story. That part there I think could be improved, or I don't like that part, but it's my decision as whether it stays in or not." The problem for me initially, and I mean, believe it or not, I've cut back on the amount of products I have, especially the amount of phrases. At one stage, I had about 25 different phrases on mugs. I used to write conversations with them. Stall the ball way, flake on the kettle, Barry's tea, I will, you're some Langer. Like it's an actual conversation, do you know what I mean? And down the road, I'm going to expand back into all of them. But at the moment, I'm just trying to keep it a little bit more contained. I mean, I love language because I see things in my head. I remember when I did my first ever Toastmaster speech, I talked about my love of language because the speech was what brought you here. And I remember quoting an REM lyric that says, "At my most beautiful, I count your eyelashes secretly." And I see that in my head. I don't see it like a visual close-up, but I see it and I feel it in my head. And that's what language has always done to me. Always, whether it's Cork language or particularly music, lyrics, poetry. Writers are all the time doing that wordplay thing. I was doing that as a child. Do you know what I mean? Somebody would say something, you're thinking of another word straight away. So, yeah, that's the madness.
Very good. Madness, yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. And your visual art kind of depicts like cherished places like Sir Henry's and Patrick's Hill. What makes these specific locations so vital to the rebel spirit for you?
Henry's because it's so iconic. It was an easy pick. I was never a Henry's clubber. I was an indie kid. I was in the front bar and I was going to see bands like the Super Furry Animals in there. But the vibe of the place, I mean, Henry's was known all over Europe. People forget that all over Europe. Like I remember when people played in Mill Street and Mike Pickering had DJ'd in Henry's and he brought the lads, Fish Goes Loop and maybe Stevie G, brought a few of them up and actually, gave an oration about what Henry's had done. Like the place is iconic and not just from a clubland point of view, the amount of bands that played there on the way up. Incredible. Nancy Spain's the same. I loved Nancy's. I used to go to Nancy's regular. I was at loads of gigs upstairs. But that's what you're doing. You're reconnecting people with it, Patrick's Hill was done just because of the beauty of that stretch of houses. It's just, I think it's an iconic, and you'll be amazed how many people recognise it immediately. Immediately. And then you have people saying, "Oh, I went to school up there," and, blah, blah, blah. And the little signs on it, posh gaffs, obviously heading towards the Southside, and 96 FM, and what's the other one on that? It's for me. I think what I do is it's the little details. Like you could do a picture of Patrick's Hill, and I don't want to say anyone can do that. That's incorrect. And there are amazing images of that scene out there as well. But what I do is I add this little extra little thing, this little like hundreds and thousands. Do you know what I mean? With the phrases and the signs, and so yeah, that was done just because it's just so beautiful.
Quirkiness,
Yeah,
isn't it? You
it's
add a little
just
bit of
so
quirkiness.
beautiful.
Yeah,
And again, there's loads of options. I haven't done Shandon. You can do. I mean, you can do Blackrock Castle. I haven't done that. I've used that in other ways, as you know, on the Northside, Southside logos. There's loads of options, and I'm not the only one. There's a whole list of artists out there doing this. A whole list of them out there doing this.
Speaking about the north side and south side divide, it's legendary part of our culture. Like,
Yeah.
how do people react to you playfully navigating and celebrating this rivalry through your own products?
99.9% of them absolutely love it. They come up and they literally say to you, "Oh my God, I love it." You get the odd one. You'll get the odd one. Somebody said to me a while back, I don't think it's a bit funny. And I said, well, if it's not for you, it's not for you. But 99 point, and not only do they love it, they will then have the crack with it. Do you know what I mean? So when I started doing the social media videos, what we do is we shoot it in like a half a day. And the first day we went north and we did the loads of stuff on the north side. And people still say to me, I'm from the south side. No, we're sorry about that. And I'm going, I'm from Talker. I'm from the south side myself. And they, oh, I didn't know that and blah, blah. But it's all fun. It's literally all
Mm.
fun. And a lot of people have said to me they love the fact that I'm celebrating because I'm not trying to, in any shape or form, slag people off or make it a big deal or say I don't like Northsiders or Northsiders don't like South. I'm celebrating the fact that we can slag each other about it because I think that is such a gift, and it is
Mm.
literally such a gift. So this year we're going to run a couple of events. Can't tell you anything about them. They're top secret, and they're genuinely top secret, right? But we're going to run a couple of events that I think will really spark some not just interest. So, and this is the other thing. I mean, it's great fun, but people are incredibly proud of where they're from, and I think rightly so. People should be proud of where they're from, and then you're tapping into that as well. Do you know what I mean? No, I would have to say that my view on being proud of where you're from. Everyone should be proud of where they're from, but there's a way of expressing it as well. And unfortunately, in certain areas, we lose touch with that. But if you're doing it in the right way, I think you'll always get some decent feedback and connection with people, and that's what I'm trying to do. That's what I'm trying to do.
And speak about your poetry. Like, how does the visceral energy of a live spoken word audience influence the visual art or influence the visual art you create?
So I'm like an awful lot of people. I didn't really like poetry in school. Had an amazing teacher, John O'Shea. He was so passionate. He was involved in the Everyman. I remember him acting out Macbeth for us, him on his own. But they tell you what the poem is about. So it was, underline that in red, underline that in green, double underline, fucking blah, blah, blah. And there's always an element of me that I never liked being told what to do anyway. But also with it being language, it just felt, I don't know, it just felt wrong. So I remember reading Sylvia Plath's The Mirror, what a piece of writing, and them explaining to us, what it represented. And I was thinking, you didn't need that to explain that to me. You didn't. Do you know what I mean? But what
Mm.
they never talked about was how does it make you feel. Now, I wouldn't have
Mhm.
been thinking back then. You didn't ask me how it feels. But when I look back into things, the language that I interacted with in books and poetry, it was always about the feel. Do you know what I mean? So it was kind of a sterile way of educating. And like an awful lot of people who are active in the poetry world, they will tell you that they left school in the same place and then were like, oh, poetry, give me a break. Like, what? I don't want to be listening to that crap. And then I started attending Ovale. The first time I started attending Ovale, I went for about 6 weeks and I stopped because I just couldn't cope with how good they were. Uh, the second time I went back, I stuck at it. And then there was two epiphany moments with spoken word. I saw Julie Goo perform at a kind of cabaret night, which was a fundraiser, and I literally thought I've never seen anything like this in my life. I mean, she is unbelievably brilliant. She has a piece called Dear Society, Dear Society, and it's about coming out, and it's just magic. Like, do you know what I mean? Um, and that was a huge moment. And one of the things I was always really good at was, so I remember talking to her after and saying, "Oh my God, you blew my mind." And I've always been good at that. Never would bother me going up to anybody and saying I thought you were amazing. And that was a shift. Suddenly I realised, well, there's other stuff going on here that I wasn't aware of. And then I saw a guy called John Cummins from Dublin perform at a Winter Warmer Festival for Ovale. And I mean, yeah, he blew my mind. And I can remember coming out of there thinking that's what I want to do. Um, and again, he's rooted, and Julie Goo is the same. She's rooted in Ireland, rooted in Cork. John is obviously rooted in Dublin, and there's this way of coming at it, and this way of talking and expressing what Irishness and Corkness means and what's happening in the country means to you. So Julie's got this amazing poem about the Magdalen assistants. It's just again, no, it just touches you. You know what I mean? Yeah, that was a serious moment for me. And then I started performing, which is really in some ways you can describe it as a matter of just taking the poem off the page because you learn the poem and you recite it. But then they just took on a whole new leaf of life. When you take away the reading, they come into you, and then it's like there's parts of you start coming out because what you've written is in some shape or form autobiographical. And those parts of you that felt what you were writing suddenly come to the fore, and you find you're expressing the poem, for me, in a completely different way. In a completely
Okay.
different way. And then obviously that feeling translates into your art, your visual art, whatever, because it all influences everything.
And speaking about, like, say, collaborating with various other creatives and musicians, like including the experience of supporting Linton Kwesky Johnson, how do you approach integrating your lyrical and artistic perspective with the vision of others?
Wow, see, I don't think about art like that. This is the
Yeah,
thing for me.
just natural, like it's
I
just.
just do it. That's literally, I just
Mm,
do it. So when we did that, I mean, I remember when Carl McLally rang me, and I was like, it was one of those where you go, is this really happening? Like, do you know what I mean? This
yeah,
guy has been around forever. I
yeah,
was amazed he was still alive. And he was amazing on the night. And there was 5 of us, I think, that were on the support act. Julie Gu actually couldn't make it. Um, and it was an incredible experience. Like, I mean, I have a picture somewhere, it might be on my website actually, that somebody took from the audience, and you look at it and go, oh my God. Yeah, so, like, the way I work is, if I'm asked to do something, my only thought process is, do I want to do it? And there could be reasons why you don't want to do it. It might be that they don't have any money. That wouldn't have been an issue in the early days. It's possible for me, because I'm quite, you know, strong in my political views. It hasn't happened that I could be asked to do something I would say no on the strength of a political view. And the only thing that happens after I say yes is I start thinking about, the set list and what I'm going to put together. And for me, then it's really about, am I going to, what story am I telling within those poems? Because you can put them together in different ways. But it's never really about anything else. Um,
okay,
and I think that's to my benefit. I don't, like, I was actually talking to somebody about this recently. I mean, I get nervous before I go on stage, or I used to. Now I get nervous when I'm on stage. When I start, something happens, but then sometimes I don't get nervous at all, and sometimes it's a little bit nervous. But throughout my life, it's a bit like that idea of not being overly impressed by being asked to meet the Taoiseach or the president. And I played football, and we went down to Turner's Cross to play finals, because I was lucky enough to go down there as a kid, and went down there as an adult. There was never any nerves. It was just, I'm here. This is what I do. And I would be I would be going on stage when I did the Cork McLally, who asked me to do that gig in live St. Luke's. Also asked me to be involved in a show that 3 of them had written, him, Julie Gu, and another guy had written for the centenary anniversary, um, which was about writing a poem about Ireland in 1916, 2016, and 3016. And I didn't want to do it initially. But once I decide, then I'm committed, and then it's really about what am I bringing. And I tend not to overthink it from that point of view.
yeah,
It's just
just
this,
go with the
yeah.
flow.
And again, no, looking back in it, that was there long before I had any value on what I did. When I was in the place where I thought what I'm doing is a complete waste of time, and I don't think people will get it. And even when people come up to after me saying, "Oh, I really like that, and I love that poem, and that don't touch me," or whatever, it was difficult to hear that stuff. But I think that idea of not overthinking it beforehand served me well, because if I'd started to think about it, I might never have gone and done it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, it's hard to explain what a lack of self-esteem does to you. Like, it's really hard to explain it. And then, that old idea of fake it till you make it. Man, I was on stages, and was I faking? I mean, literally, as you're reciting a poem, thinking, "There's nobody gets this." Poetry. Do you know what I mean? Literally, those thoughts going through my head as I'm reciting poems. Do you know? And those thoughts going through my head as people coming up after me afterwards saying, "Oh my God, I thought that was amazing." It's a weird thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But to be fair, like, it's worked out for you, despite all that maybe negativity that's going on, like you've been able to bring it.
Yeah, and I mean, that I said to you earlier on, there's a little bit of it's a little bit of a miracle in some ways.
Mm,
And you learn as you go, and you just take steps in different directions. And I was always brave. Julie Goose said that to me a long time ago about herself, that she was always brave, in the sense she was prepared to try new things and put herself in what could be an uncomfortable situation, because it's kind of easy to sit on your laurels. You know what I mean? I
mm,
write this type of poem, it's done quite well, or whatever it is, I do this type of art, or I'm in this type of band. Uh, but it's harder to be shifting and shaping it for yourself. But then I look at all the artists that I've loved over the years through music, and they've all done that. Bowie, Paul Simon, the Beatles. They've all shifted and shaped and gone and done different things. You know, even Suede, who now have a second career, which I haven't really followed. Even, you know, you look at their, and they get tarnished as being, you know, sounding the same, but they don't. If you listen to the first, second, and third albums, they're all completely different. And I've always liked that. I've never liked that idea of repetitiveness. Do you know what I mean? I've never, and you know, look, everyone's into their own thing. I just think if you're an artist, if you're a creative, then everything you digest is looking to be regurgitated in some way. Mainly, I think, certainly from my point of view, like anything that I'm creating, the Cork stuff, the poetry with song titles, the art about the music, they're all, for me, homages to these things that I've loved and have given me so much and continue to give me so much. It's all about tribute, like for me, it's all about tribute. I did for a while do some of the art for people who say to me, "Oh, would you do one for, you know, pick a name, Britney Spears?" And I did, and I'd written a Britney Spears poem actually, almost out of piggery. But nowadays, I tend to just do the things that I want to do and the people that I admire. So if I'm going to generate art, it's about artists that I either know really well through their music or visually I am been impressed by over a long period of time. And when, again, as you get older, you start to realize things. Music and words and visuals were always as equally as important to me. Like I could listen to a band, but if they weren't saying something, I'd no interest. And I could listen to a band, and if they were saying something, I'd interest. But if I didn't like the way they looked, then I wasn't listening. So, you know, I look at, and, you know, maybe that's to my detriment, but like, you know, when you went to, like at the time when I was a kid and you had White Snake and all these bands, one look and I'm gone, I'm out of here, like, that's not for me. But then you look at somebody like OMD, who visually weren't that impressive, but they weren't deterring me. So I've only learned quite recently that they decided to look like office workers deliberately, as like a kickback against all the new romantic stuff that was going on. But then I would have looked at bands like Spandau Ballet and Duran Duran and would have loved their early music work, but visually they were just incredible. No, I didn't, you know, I didn't want to go out dressed up with all the frills on me, but I just thought this is amazing. And then you realise as you get older that all that's influenced by Steve Strange, who was a huge influence. He was hugely influenced by David Bowie, and Roxy Music were influenced by Bowie. And then you realise that it's all just a part of paying homage to people, do you know what I mean? And then I'm always trying to find the balance in that, in the sense that I don't want to be like everybody else. So one of my favourite quotes is Kurt Cobain's one where he says, they laugh at me because I'm different. I laugh at them because they're all the same. Now, I don't laugh at people anymore, but I understand what he's saying completely. And so you're trying to find the balance between, yeah, you know, I love Bowie, I love the Beatles, but I don't want to necessarily look like them and sound like them because what they did was unique and they're encouraging you to be unique, you know? So one of my favourite interviews about that is Mark Allman from Soft Cell, saying that when he started Soft Cell, he was an art student. I'm sure you know that. They were both art students. And he said, you know, a huge thrust of it was just be entirely who you are. And they were completely different. And he said, 6 months later, I'm standing in front of thousands of people who look exactly like me and thinking, how did this happen? I'm telling them to be yourself and different. And they're all turning up dressed like me. What do you, like, what do you do? What do you do? I mean, the idea that somebody would appear in front of me dressed the same as me would actually horrify me. No, I'm not saying I'm not. You know, I love seeing people wearing the t-shirts and the hats.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? There's always this kind of balancing act going on. Yeah, I love that. Oh, I want to go and, you know, get as close to as I can, but there's no way I'm going to mimic it completely.
You as such, like everyone needs to be themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. What's
And
that? Go on.
What's your favorite piece of Cork slang? Is that like saying, like, how do I choose?
Oh my God, that's like asking me what one song I take to a desert island. I couldn't cope with that pressure, no.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. I mean, for me, they've all got this depth to them, and that's why it's so hard to pick one. So I will, the fact that it means no, but is said in a way that you're not sure is just
Yeah.
incredible. You know, the fact that Langer has developed as a word, it was when I was a kid, a Langer, that was a major insult. Like,
Major, yeah.
no, it's a term of endearment. Do you know what I mean? And then it's the fact that Langer becomes Langer Loads and Langer Dan, and you know, we used to take Langies on the. I don't know if you remember that, jumping on the back of Raleigh. You know, it's this depth that goes on in around it. But if I had to pick one, I'd probably say Chalk It Down. I love Chalk It Down. Chalk It Down, boy. Chalk It Down. I love it. I just love it. And, you know, Doubt Your Boy is magic as well. And the more I do this, the more I'm thinking about how these things are stitched into our culture and our city. Do you know what I mean? And wouldn't it be fascinating to be able to go back and look at things that were written in Cork language 50 years ago and compare them to where we are now? And in some little way, I think I'm playing a role in it, because I think, you know, somewhere down the road, people can pick up a Christmas card that I've written, or a I love me mum card or whatever, and some of that language will be obsolete, or maybe not as in use as much, or may, like Langer, have changed its definition in some shape or form. And, you know, for me, if I play any little role in that, I'd be absolutely, absolutely chuffed. You know, I'm thinking now about people like Frank O'Connor and Colin Creedon and Jerry Murphy, who have contributed enormously in that area and more. Like, if I had just a little piece of that, and having as much fun doing it as I am, I'd be happy with that.
Very good. Very good. And you've performed in like vastly different venues, like from major festivals like Body and Soul to Cork Prison. What performance environment has kind of surprised you the most?
Man, I should have read these questions, shouldn't I?
I like to put you on the spot, don't I?
But funny enough, I prefer that I'm doing the thinking now rather than having thought
Yeah.
it through beforehand. Cork Prison was a serious eye opener. Like, serious eye opener. Just entering the prison, and you've seen it on the telly, but no. And then they were so interesting, because you think they're kind of. It felt like being a teacher. You know, you're doing this thing, and they're sitting there, and they must have. I mean, teachers must look down at classrooms every day of the week and think they have absolutely no interest whatsoever, and yet they were taking it in. And there was an amazing conversation that came out of it about journaling and them writing to try and understand what their experience is. And one guy was saying he writes letters, but he doesn't send them to anybody, he just writes them. And it's his way of getting it out. And then other people were talking about, you know, they journaled as part of a recovery, and it was just, I had no idea what I was expecting, but I definitely was not expecting what we got in there. Definitely not. And they were so welcoming. I mean, you know, I'm a huge believer in people, and I watch a lot of things about criminal justice, particularly in America, just because they've got so much of it available. And, you know, I say to people, like, we have 2,000 years of evidence that the prison system doesn't work. Why aren't we fucking changing it? And there is loads of evidence out there now in other parts of the world, and America included, where if there is a different way to do this, and there is better ways of doing this, and there are ways that stop people reoffending, and they're cheaper than keeping them in jail. You know, I mean, I could go on and on here. No, Geraldine. Ian Wright, the footballer, has a piece of television that he did years ago where he went into a kids and young boys, I don't know what you call it, a borstal or something.
Center or something like that.
And he set up a football academy. And through the football academy, he developed their personalities and improved their confidence. And I'm telling you, life-changing television. For them, it was life-changing, but it's life-changing watching it, because you're watching kids who you realise have gone down that road because of influences or decisions that were influenced by, you know, the wrong people, and given an opportunity. Most of them grabbed it with two hands. And I tell you now, one of the things I will never forget this. He arranged a game, a five-a-side game for his panel against the five-a-side blind football team that represented him. I'd never heard of blind football. And the way blind football works is the outfield players are blind and the goalkeeper can see, and they've got these like little marbles in the ball so it makes noises, right? So he blindfolded his team to play them. The interviews with them afterwards, you could literally see the pennies dropping in their head. This little kid, 17 years of age, who'd been in trouble since he was 12, came to the camera and he said, I am never complaining about anything again in my life. It doesn't matter what my dad did, what my mum didn't do. He said, they have been, like the most of them were veterans. He said, they've been to war. They've been blinded, and look at them. And he's like, you can see him thinking, what am I doing with my life? It's all like all these things I'm telling myself are the reasons that I'm in prison. It's all nonsense. And that's for me is the trick. You have to make people think differently. Like I taught the Life Centre for a number of years, and that's the battle. The battle is make them think differently, and it's predominantly make them think differently about themselves. You know, I was that kid who at 16, 17 was completely lost because, there was people who believed me, but I couldn't hear it. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
Yeah. So, I mean, all that feeds into what I do as well. All that passion and anger and frustration and belief.
Looking at everything you do, like from your pop-up shops and your visual art, your poetry and fiction, what exciting project is next? You mentioned about little secret events that you can't talk about, but is there anything else you can chat to us about?
Yeah. So I mean, look, they're really exciting, and I have to say, like, that I'm really excited about where the business is going. I have a vision in my head of it being what I'd call a proper business with a premise, and I see the premise as having everything I do in it. I see a premise with a section for the Cork stuff, a section for the art that I do, a section for the poetry I do, all those things. And I think, like the amount of work I had to do myself in the development has really allowed me to go into business and to really start exploring those creative things. And now it's kind of gone slightly full circle in the sense now the creative stuff is feeding where I want to go with the business. So, I've plans to get my music art out into the world much more. I might do an exhibition, another exhibition. I've done one before. I produced a poetry book 4 years ago, and I did a GoFundMe at the time. It might have been during the pandemic actually, and the GoFundMe was about the rewards. One of the rewards was a copy of the album when it was completed, and it hasn't been completed. But I'm going to get that done this year. In fact, pretty soon, and I'm going to put it out on vinyl. That's really exciting because it's music. Like I have an album now by a girl called Megan Ali Maguire. She's a local musician. I think she's amazing. And I keep this as short as I can. I'm on one of the tracks because she asked me to do the spoken word piece on it. And I tell you now, when I got the copy of that record and I saw my name on the sleeve in tiny little writing, do you know what I mean? What a buzz. So
Yeah.
it's just, it's all those things that when you were growing up, you're looking at. And, to have the poetry collection out was amazing. I have a kid's book that I really want to get back to. 10 years, and I'm not exaggerating, 10 years at it. Maybe longer, no, Jesus. Been abandoned. It's a novel, like it's a whole world. And I've gone at it in a whole loads of different ways, trying to create it as an online game. All these were just distractions, I know now. So I'd love to get back to that, and I'd love to get that out there. And I want to perform more this year. I spoke to Owen Jordan yesterday or the day before about trying to get together this week and having a chat and going out and doing some more shows.
We're going to chalk them all now down. We're going to keep an eye out for it.
Well, I wouldn't want to be getting notions now, like, would I? Do you know what I mean? I mean, the next thing you know, I'll be getting notions about going to live in Douglas. The smell of notions in Douglas is unreal. Why? People think it's the smell of the ocean, but it's not the smell of notions. You go down Rochestown Road, oh my God, you'll be knocked out. The smell of notions is only pure lethal down there, boy. Broken it is.
Now, I'm going to ask you for a bit of advice now, like drawing from your own experience, which is a wealth of experience, to be fair. What advice would you give to a young creative looking to find their own authentic voice in Cork?
Well, I'd say two things to them, right? One is I'd say just do what you want to do, right? That's the first thing. And don't worry about what anybody else is thinking in regards to, maybe he's decided he's going to, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something. Or maybe he's going to produce a hip hop album with only a harp player behind him. I don't know. I say that now because Hazel O'Connor was on tour a couple of years ago with just a harp player. Whatever it is you want to do, then just go and do it. And if you want some help to go and do it, to stay on that path, read The Artist's Way. Life-changing book. If you commit to it, it is literally a life-changing book. Yeah. your art is your art, and your art is part of you, and your art will help you stay well. If you're not doing it, you will be really unwell. And if you're not doing it in a way that you want to do it, you're still going to be unwell. Do you know what I mean? Look, you have to, you want to try and make a living out of it, and you can make a living in lots of different ways, and you can certainly make a living by reproducing the same thing over and over again. That's without doubt is a recipe for success for lots of people. But for most creative people, you need to be moving. So you just need to do what you need to do. And whatever that is, there's somebody out there that will help you with it, without doubt, with absolute doubt. So what I'm telling them is, what I didn't believe myself when I was that age. Yeah, just believe in yourself and just do it. And if you really, really want to do it, then you will do it. There's no doubt about it. None.
Perfect. And don't get notions.
Well, yeah. Well, you wouldn't want to end up noting me. Do you know what I mean? Sitting in front of a camera talking shite as if you knew for a split second what you were doing with your life. Like, come on, no way. I barely passed me leaving cert. Like, I never saw the inside of a college. Well, I did, but I dropped out. Like, do you know what I mean? I'm from Torquay. Jeez, if I went over there and I'd be round the corner now, I'm only 5 minutes away. But if I went over there and to talk, they'd bait the head off me. Poetry, they'd be saying. I bet you good looking boy if I had 3 weeks to spare.
It's not good for me, Stan. Oh, I have to go back to work after this.
Laughter's always good for you, Geraldine.
That's it. So thanks so much, Stan, for chatting to me and making me laugh on the Cork Creative Podcast. If you want to find more about Stan and his work, you can find links to his various socials and website at corkcreative.ie.
Thank you so much. Really, really enjoyed it.